This happened to me 3 winters ago when I was living in northern Ontario, about 40 minutes outside of Sydney. I've never told anyone the full story because honestly, I don't think anyone would believe me, but I need to get this out there, even if just to remind myself that it was real. I worked as a surveyor for a logging company, which meant spending a lot of time alone in the Canadian wilderness. It was December, and we were scouting new areas for a spring operation. My supervisor asked me to drive out to a remote section of Crown land to take some measurements and photographs. The area was accessible by an old logging road that hadn't been maintained in years. I left early that morning, around 5, hoping to get the work done before sunset. December days are short, that far north, and I didn't want to be out there after dark. The drive took longer than expected. The road was covered in ice and snow, and several times I had to get out and clear fallen branches. By the time I reached the coordinates, it was already 2 in the afternoon. The sky was that heavy gray color that meant more snow was coming. I worked quickly, taking my measurements and photographs, but the light was fading faster than I anticipated. Around 4:30, the snow started falling. Not gentle flakes, but thick, heavy snow that reduced visibility to almost nothing. I knew I needed to leave immediately, but when I got back to my truck, it wouldn't start. The battery was completely dead. I'd left the interior light on by accident, and in that cold, it had drained within hours. I had no cell service. I was at least 40 kilometers from the nearest town. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and I knew that staying in the truck overnight without heat could be fatal. I had survival gear, but not enough to safely wait out a night in minus 30-degree weather. That's when I noticed the cabin. It was about 200 meters off the road, barely visible through the trees. I hadn't seen it earlier, but there it was. A small wooden structure with a single window facing my direction. There was no smoke coming from the chimney, no lights, no vehicle. It looked abandoned. I gathered my emergency kit and started walking toward it. The snow was already up to my knees in places. Every step was exhausting. As I got closer, I noticed something strange about the cabin. The door was painted red, a deep, almost blood-colored red that stood out against the gray wood and white snow. There were symbols carved into the frame around the door. They looked old, worn down by weather, but I couldn't recognize them. I knocked. No answer. I tried the door, and it opened easily. Inside, the cabin was sparse, but not empty. There was a wood-burning stove, a small bed frame with a bare mattress, and a table with 2 chairs. Everything was covered in a thin layer of frost. It looked like no one had been there in months, maybe years. But here's the thing that still bothers me. The firewood next to the stove was freshly cut. The edges weren't weathered at all. I didn't have time to think about it. I needed warmth. I started a fire, and within an hour, the small cabin was almost comfortable. The storm outside was getting worse. Wind howled through gaps in the walls. I could hear tree branches cracking in the forest. I ate some of my emergency rations and tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Something felt wrong about the place. The shadows seemed to move strangely in the firelight. Every time the wind shifted, I thought I heard something beneath it. Something that sounded almost like breathing. Around midnight, I heard the first knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the red door. I froze. I was in the middle of nowhere, in a blizzard. No one should have been out there. No one could have been out there. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The knocking came again. 3 knocks. Same rhythm. Same pause between each one. I stood up slowly, quietly, and moved toward the window. The frost on the glass was too thick to see through. I used my sleeve to clear a small circle and pressed my face against the cold glass. There was nothing outside. Just snow and darkness. I went back to my spot by the stove, telling myself it was just a branch hitting the cabin, but the knocking came again. This time, it was coming from the wall behind me. 3 knocks. The same exact pattern. Then from the floor beneath me. 3 knocks. Then from directly above, from the ceiling. 3 knocks. All around the cabin, from every direction. The same 3 knocks repeated. Not all at once, but in sequence. Like whatever was making the sound was circling the structure, getting Dili. I grabbed the axe I'd seen by the firewood and backed into the corner farthest from the door. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. The fire crackled. The wind howled, and then I heard something that made my blood freeze. A voice. Soft, almost a whisper, coming from just outside the door. You lit the fire. You called me home. It was a woman's voice, but there was something wrong with it. It sounded like it was coming from underwater, or from very far away, even though it was right outside. Open the door. Let me in. It's so cold out here. Every instinct told me not to respond. I pressed myself harder against the wall, gripping the axe so tightly my hands ached. The voice came again, but this time it was different. It sounded like my mother. My mother, who had passed away 5 years earlier. Sweetheart, please. I'm freezing. Why won't you let me in? I felt tears streaming down my face, but I didn't move. I knew, somehow, that whatever was outside was not my mother, that it couldn't be my mother. But it sounded exactly like her. Every inflection, every little quirk of her voice was perfect. The knocking started again, but this time it was violent. The whole cabin shook with each impact. The door rattled in its frame. The red paint seemed to glow in the firelight. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. The knocking, the voice, even the wind seemed to die down. I stood there in that corner until dawn, not moving, barely breathing. When the first gray light of morning came through the window, I opened the door and looked outside. There were no footprints in the snow. None except my own from the night before, already half buried. But on the door, on that red door, there were scratches, deep gouges in the wood, like something with claws had tried to tear its way through. I walked back to my truck in a daze. Somehow, impossibly, it started on the first try. I drove straight back to town and never told anyone what happened. A month later, I looked up the area on old survey maps. There was no cabin listed at those coordinates. There never had been. When I drove back out there in the spring, just to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it, there was nothing. No cabin, no clearing. Just dense, unbroken forest. Sometimes, when the wind blows a certain way in winter, I still hear 3 knocks. My cousin worked as a security guard at an old hospital in Manila. Not one of the modern ones, but San Lazaro Hospital, the one that had been around since the Spanish colonial era. He worked the night shift for almost 2 years before he quit, and the story he told me about why he left still keeps me awake sometimes. The hospital had a reputation among the staff. Everyone knew there were certain areas you didn't go to alone after midnight. Certain rooms that were kept locked, not because of maintenance issues, but because of things that couldn't be explained. The older guards would warn the new ones, but most people thought it was just hazing. My cousin was one of them. He was assigned to the East Wing, which housed the older wards that weren't used anymore. Budget cuts had closed them down, but the building was still connected to the main hospital. His job was to patrol the empty hallways, check the locks, and make sure no one had broken in. For the first few months, nothing happened. The building was creepy, sure, with its peeling paint and flickering lights, but it was just an old building. My cousin would walk his rounds, listen to music on his phone, and count down the hours until his shift ended. Then he started noticing things. It began with sounds. Footsteps in hallways he'd just walked through. Doors closing softly, somewhere in the dark. The sound of someone crying, very faint, coming from rooms that had been empty for decades. He told himself it was the building settling, or homeless people sneaking in, or his imagination playing tricks on him. But then he saw the woman. It was around 3 in the morning. He was doing his rounds on the 4th floor, the one that used to be the children's ward. He turned a corner and saw someone standing at the far end of the hallway. A woman in a white dress, facing away from him. She was completely still, standing in front of a window. He called out to her, thinking maybe she was a lost patient from the main hospital. She didn't respond. He started walking toward her, his flashlight beam bouncing off the walls. He was maybe 10 meters away when she turned around. He couldn't see her face. The hallway was dark, and his flashlight wasn't strong enough to illuminate her clearly. But he could see that where her face should have been, there was nothing. Just smooth, pale skin. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. My cousin ran. He didn't stop until he reached the security office on the ground floor. He told his supervisor what he'd seen, but the older man just nodded sadly, like he'd heard this story before. "That's the lady of the 4th floor," he said. "She's been here longer than any of us. Just don't look at her too long, and whatever you do, don't let her get too close." My cousin wanted to quit that night, but he needed the money. He had a wife and a baby daughter at home. Jobs were hard to find, so he kept working, but he stopped going to the 4th floor. He'd mark it as checked on his report, but stay on the lower levels. It worked for a while. Weeks passed without incident. He started to think maybe it had been a hallucination or a prank by the other guards. He started to relax. Then the woman came to him. He was in the basement, checking the old storage rooms. The basement was actually one of the less scary parts of the building because it was so ordinary, just filing cabinets and old equipment. Nothing special. He was walking past a row of shelves when his flashlight flickered. When it came back on, she was standing in front of him. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. She was so close he could see the texture of her skin, smooth and white like porcelain. She was wearing a nurse's uniform, he realized, but an old one, from maybe 50 or 60 years ago, and she was tilting her head, slowly, like she was studying him. Then she raised her hand. My cousin described what happened next as the worst moment of his life. She reached toward his face, and as her fingers got closer, he felt cold spreading through his body. Not just physical cold, but something deeper, like all the warmth and hope and life was being drained out of him. He managed to close his eyes. He remembered something his grandmother told him as a child, that if you can't see them, they have less power over you. So he squeezed his eyes shut and started praying. Every prayer he could remember. The Our Father, the Hail Mary prayers he hadn't said since he was a boy. The cold stopped getting worse. It didn't go away, but it stopped spreading. He kept praying, kept his eyes closed for what felt like hours. When he finally opened them, he was alone. But something had changed. For the next few weeks, my cousin felt like he was being watched constantly, not just at work, but at home. He would wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow in the corner of his bedroom. His baby daughter would stare at empty spaces and cry. His wife said the house felt wrong, heavy, like something was pressing down on them. He went to a priest, then to an abulalio, a traditional healer. They both told him the same thing. Something had attached itself to him. Something from the hospital. They performed rituals, gave him blessed objects, but nothing worked completely. Finally, he quit his job. He didn't give notice, didn't collect his last paycheck. He just stopped going. His family moved to a different city, far from Manila. It took almost a year, but slowly, things went back to normal. The shadows went away. His daughter stopped crying at night. The heaviness lifted, but he told me that sometimes, even now, he'll be walking somewhere and catch a glimpse of a woman in white at the edge of his vision. When he turns to look, there's no one there. He never went back to that hospital. He said he never will. Some places, he told me, have things living in them that shouldn't be disturbed. And some of those things, once they notice you, never really let go. I'm American, but my grandmother was from Mexico. She lived in a small town outside of Guanajuato. And every summer when I was growing up, my family would drive down to visit her. This story is about the last trip we ever took. I was 19, old enough to do some of the driving. My father and I were taking shifts behind the wheel while my mother slept in the back seat. We'd crossed the border at Laredo and were making good time through the desert. We decided to drive through the night to avoid the worst of the heat. My father took the first shift, and I slept until around 2 in the morning when he woke me up. He was exhausted, barely keeping his eyes open, so I took over while he passed out in the passenger seat. The highway was empty, miles of nothing but scrub land and darkness, with occasional small towns that were just clusters of light in the distance. I had the radio on low, some Mexican station playing old ballads. Around 3, I saw someone on the side of the road. This wasn't unusual. Even in the middle of nowhere, you'd sometimes see people walking, hitchhiking, or just standing around. But something about this person made me slow down. It was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. She was standing perfectly still on the shoulder of the highway, wearing a white dress that looked like a communion gown. She was alone. I pulled over about 50 meters past her, thinking she must be lost or in trouble. My father woke up and asked what was wrong. I told him about the girl, and he immediately tensed up. Keep driving, he sobbed. Dad, she's just a kid. She's alone out here. Keep driving. Now. There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Real fear. But I couldn't just leave a child on the side of the highway in the middle of the night. I got out of the car and started walking back toward her. Hey, are you okay? Do you need help? She didn't move, didn't respond. As I got closer, I could see that her dress was dirty, stained with something dark. Her hair was hanging in front of her face. I was maybe 10 feet away when my father grabbed my arm. I hadn't heard him get out of the car. Look at her feet, he whispered. Primera, look down. The girl's feet weren't touching the ground. She was floating just a few inches above the dirt, completely motionless. My father pulled me back toward the car. I couldn't look away from the girl. And then she lifted her head. Her face was wrong. The features were all there. Eyes, nose, mouth. But they were arranged incorrectly, like a child's drawing of a face. Her eyes were too far apart, her mouth too wide. And she was smiling. We ran. I've never moved so fast in my life. My father practically threw me into the passenger seat and got behind the wheel. The tire screamed as he floored the accelerator. I looked in the rearview mirror. The girl was in the middle of the road now, still smiling that terrible smile. And she was getting closer, not walking or running, just gliding toward us, her feet never touching the ground. She was moving faster than the car. My mother woke up screaming. She'd seen it too. My father drove like a madman, taking the car up to speeds I didn't think it could reach. The girl kept pace with us for what felt like miles. In the mirror, I could see her face getting clearer, larger, closer. That smile never changed. Then we passed a small shrine on the side of the road, one of those little roadside memorials you see everywhere in Mexico, with candles and flowers and a cross. The moment we passed it, the girl stopped. She just stopped, standing in the middle of the highway, that smile finally fading. We kept driving until we couldn't see her anymore. We didn't stop again until sunrise. We pulled into a gas station in some small town, and my father went inside without saying a word. He came back with a bottle of holy water and made all of us drink from it. Later, he told me what he knew. His mother, my grandmother, had told him stories about the roads of Guanajuato, about spirits that appeared to travelers at night, spirits of children who had died violently and were trapped between worlds. They would try to lure travelers off the road, or into accidents, or into following them into the darkness. Some people who encountered them never came back. Others came back wrong. The communion dress was the sign. My futter sighed. Some of the spirits wore the clothes they'd been buried in. The girl we saw had probably been dead for decades. We made it to my grandmother's town that afternoon. When we told her what happened, she didn't seem surprised. She just nodded and lit candles for us, saying prayers in a mix of Spanish and something older, words I didn't recognize. She let you go, my grandmother said finally. Be grateful. Not everyone is so lucky. That was the last summer I visited Mexico. My grandmother passed away the following year, and we never went back. But sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I think I see a figure in white at the edge of my headlights. I never stop. I never slowed down. And I never, ever look in the rearview mirror. I need to tell you about the house on Birchwood Lane. Not because I want to, but because I need someone else to know what happened there. Maybe then I can finally sleep through the night without checking every corner of my apartment. My name is Daniel, and 3 years ago, I inherited my grandmother's house in rural Ohio. She had lived there alone for 40 years after my grandfather passed. The house was built in 1938, a sturdy farmhouse with creaking wooden floors and a basement that always smelled like damp earth, no matter how many times you aired it out. I remember visiting as a kid. Grandma always kept the upstairs hallway light on, even during the day. When I asked her why, she would just smile and say, "The house likes it that way." I thought she was being quirky. Old people say strange things sometimes. When said the house? Passed to me. My parents had no interest in it. Too remote, they sold. Too much work. But I was 26, working remotely, and the idea of owning property outright was too tempting to pass up. I moved in during October, just as the leaves were turning and the nights were getting longer. The first week was uneventful. I cleaned out Grandma's belongings, donated most of her furniture, and started making the place my own. I painted the living room a modern gray, replaced the old curtains with blinds, and set up my office in what used to be the spare bedroom. It was on the 8th night that I first heard it. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, like someone wearing boots, walking slowly toward my door. I froze. The house was locked. I had checked twice before bed, a habit I had developed living alone. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, staring at the thin strip of light beneath the door, waiting for a shadow to appear. Nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I grabbed the baseball bat I kept beside my bed and threw open the door. The hallway was empty. The light I'd turned off was now on. I told myself it was the old house setting. Wood expands and contracts. Floorboards creak. There had to be a logical explanation. I turned off the hallway light and went back to bed. At exactly 3:01 a.m., I woke up. I do not know why. My eyes simply opened, and I was instantly, completely awake. The hallway light was on again. I could see it glowing beneath my door. This time, I heard breathing. Slow, ragged breathing, like someone who had been running and was trying to catch their breath. It was coming from directly outside my door. I did not move. I did not speak. I lay perfectly still, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The breathing continued for maybe 2 minutes. Then the footsteps started again, walking away from my door, down the hallway, and then down the stairs. I heard the basement door open. I did not sleep for the rest of that night. When morning came, I checked the entire house. Every door was still locked. Every window was latched. The basement door was closed, but when I opened it, a wave of cold air hit me, far colder than it should have been for October. I called my mother that afternoon and asked her if Grandma had ever mentioned anything strange about the house. There was a long pause before she answered. "Your grandmother believed someone lived in that house with her." My mother sulked quietly. She called him the Walker. She said he walked the halls at night, checking on things. She was not afraid of him. She said he had been there longer than anyone. I asked why she had never mentioned this before. She said she thought Grandma was just lonely, making up stories to cope with living alone for so many years. That night, I left the hallway light on. The footsteps still came, but they did not stop at my door. They walked past, down the stairs, and into the basement, just as they had before. This became the routine. Every night, between 2:59 and 3:01 a.m., I would wake up. Every night, I would hear the Walker making his rounds. I started researching the house's history. What I found made my blood run cold. In 1952, a man named Harold Birch had lived in the house with his wife and 2 children. One winter night, Harold heard noises from the basement. Thinking it was an intruder, he went down to investigate with his shotgun. He never came back up. His wife found him the next morning at the bottom of the basement stairs. He had fallen and broken his neck. The coroner ruled it an accident, but neighbors whispered that Harold had been running from something when he fell, running up the stairs, away from whatever he had found in the darkness below. The wife sold the house immediately. It passed through several owners over the years, none staying longer than a few years. My grandmother bought it in 1983. She stayed for 40 years. I understood now why she kept the light on. The Walker did not like the dark. Or maybe he simply wanted to be seen, to be acknowledged. I tried to leave. I packed my bags one morning, determined to drive away and never come back. But when I reached for the front door, it would not open. The lock was not engaged. The door simply would not move, as if something was holding it from the other side. I tried the back door. Same thing. The windows would not open either. I was trapped. That night, for the first time, the Walker spoke. I was lying in bed, listening to the footsteps approach, when a voice whispered through my door. It was low and gravelly, like someone who had not spoken in a very long time. "You changed things." The voice sobbed. "Put them back." I spent the next week undoing everything I had done to the house. I repainted the living room, its original cream color. I took down the blinds and found Grandma's old curtains in the attic. I moved my office back to the spare bedroom's original layout. On the 7th night, the footsteps stopped at my door again. But this time, the voice was different. Softer. Better, it said. This is how it should be. The front door worked the next morning. I could finally leave. But I did not. I still live in the house on Birchwood Lane. I keep the hallway light on. I do not change anything without asking first. Speaking aloud to the empty rooms. Explaining what I want to do and why. Sometimes I get no response, and I take that as approval. Sometimes I hear a single knock on the wall, which I have learned means no. The walker still makes his rounds every night. I've grown used to the sound of his footsteps. Some nights, I even find it comforting, knowing someone else is watching over this place. But I never, ever go into the basement after dark. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and if you ever inherit an old house, remember these. You are not the first person to live there, and you may not be the only one living there now. The house remembers everyone who came before, and some of them never left. If you ever find yourself driving through the desert stretch of Highway 60 between Phoenix and Show Low, Arizona, you might see an old gas station at mile marker 77. It looks abandoned. The pumps are rusted, the windows are boarded up, and the sign that once displayed the price of gas has been blank for decades. Do not stop there. No matter how low your tank is, no matter how badly you need to use the restroom, do not stop. Keep driving. There is another station 30 miles ahead. You can make it. I am telling you this because I stopped there once, and what happened that night changed everything I thought I knew about the world. My name is Marcus. I was 23 years old, driving from California to Texas for a new job. I had been on the road for 12 hours and was exhausted. My phone had died somewhere around Wickenburg, and I had no way of knowing how far the next town was. When I saw the gas station, I felt nothing but relief. It was just after midnight. The station was dark, except for a single light inside the main building, flickering like a candle. The pumps looked ancient, but I figured any gas was better than running out in the middle of nowhere. I pulled up to the pump and got out. The desert air was cold, far colder than I expected for late September. My breath came out in small white clouds. That should have been my first warning. The pump did not work. No surprise there. I walked toward the building, hoping to find someone inside who could help, or at least a working phone. The door was unlocked. Inside, the station looked like it had been frozen in time. There were shelves stocked with products from the 1970s, their labels faded and dusty. A rack of magazines near the counter featured celebrities who had been dead for decades. The cash register was the old mechanical kind, with buttons you had to press down hard, and behind the counter stood a man. He was tall and thin, wearing a uniform that matched the vintage of everything else in the store. His name tag read Earl. He smiled when he saw me, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "Engine trouble?" he asked. His voice was strange, like it was coming from very far away. I told him I just needed gas and maybe to use a phone. He nodded slowly and pointed toward the back of the store. "Phones in the back. Help yourself." I walked toward where he pointed, passing rows of dusty shelves. The deeper I went into the store, the colder it got. By the time I reached the back wall, I could see my breath clearly. There was no phone. There was only a door, painted red, with the words "employees only" stenciled in white letters. I turned around to ask Earl about the phone, but the store was empty. The lights were off. Through the front windows, I could see that the single flickering light had gone out too. I was alone in complete darkness. I pulled out my phone instinctively, forgetting it was dead. But when I pressed the button, it turned on. The battery showed 100%. The time on the screen read 3:33 a.m. That was impossible. I had entered the station at midnight. I had been inside for maybe 5 minutes. I used the phone's flashlight to navigate back to the front of the store. The shelves were different now. The products were gone, replaced by rows of photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, pinned to the shelves like specimens in a collection. They were all pictures of people. Men, women, children. Each photo had a date written in the corner. The oldest one I saw was from 1956. The most recent was from just 3 months ago. Every person in the photos had the same expression. Their eyes were wide, their mouths slightly open, like they had been captured in a moment of sudden terror. and standing behind each of them, barely visible in the shadows, was a tall, thin figure. Erla ran. I did not care about my car, about my gas, about anything except getting out of that building. I slammed through the front door and into the parking lot, expecting to feel the cold desert out. Instead, I felt nothing. The air was completely still, completely silent. My car was gone. The road was gone. There was only the gas station, floating in an endless void of absolute darkness. Earl's voice came from behind me. You should not have come inside. He spun around. He was standing in the doorway, silhouetted by that single flickering light, which had somehow turned back on. His smile was wider now, impossibly wide, stretching across his face in a way that no human mouth should be able to stretch. Everyone who comes inside becomes part of the collection, he said. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked. I do not know what made me think of it. Maybe it was pure instinct, pure desperation. But I remembered something my grandmother used to say. She was from Mexico, and she believed in the old ways, the old protections. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small silver crucifix she had given me before she died. I had carried it with me for years, more out of sentimentality than faith. The moment Earl saw it, his smile disappeared. His face twisted into something inhuman, something ancient and furious. Put that away, he hissed. I held it up higher. The flickering light began to pulse, faster and faster. Earl's form started to flicker too, like a bad television signal, appearing and disappearing in rapid succession. You do not belong here, I shouted. I do not know where the words came from, but they felt right. I reject this place. I reject you. The darkness around me began to crack. I could see light breaking through, thin lines of dawn spreading across the void like a shattered window. Earl's scream made a sound that was not human. That was not anything I had ever heard before. And then I was back. I was lying on the ground next to my car, in the parking lot of the gas station. The sun was rising over the desert. The building in front of me was nothing but a burned-out shell, clearly abandoned for decades. I got in my car and drove. I did not stop until I reached Texas. I tried to find information about the gas station later. What I discovered was scattered across old newspaper archives and forgotten websites. The station had been owned by a man named Earl Dunmore in the 1950s. He disappeared at night, along with 3 travelers who had stopped for gas. Their bodies were never found. The station burned down in 1962 under mysterious circumstances. Over the years, there have been dozens of reports of people seeing lights on at the abandoned station late at night. Some stopped to investigate. Most of them were never seen again. The ones who made it out told stories similar to mine. Photographs. The endless darkness. Earl. I still have nightmares about that place. Sometimes I wake up at exactly 3:33 a.m., convinced I can hear that flickering light, see that impossible smile. I carry my grandmother's crucifix everywhere now, and I never, ever drive through the desert at night. If you see the gas station at mile marker 77, keep driving. Some places are not meant to be found, and some people are not collecting souvenirs. They are collecting souls. I moved into the Ashford Apartments in Chicago 3 years ago. It was a beautiful old building, all exposed brick and original hardwood floors, built in the 1920s during the city's golden age. The rent was suspiciously cheap, but I was a broke graduate student. I did not ask questions. My unit was for a cozy 1-bedroom on the 4th floor. My only neighbor on that floor was whoever lived in 4 Bites. I never saw them move in or out. I never heard them walking around. But sometimes, late at night, I heard something else. It started with whispers. The first time, I was lying in bed, almost asleep, when I heard a woman's voice saying hello. It was soft, barely audible, like someone speaking from very far away. I assumed it was coming from outside, maybe someone on the street below. But then it came again, closer. Hello. It was coming from the wall that separated my apartment from 4B. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, I heard it. Breathing. Slow, rhythmic breathing, like someone sleeping. I knocked on the wall, gently at first, then harder. The breathing stopped. A long pause, and then a knock came back. 3 times, exactly matching my rhythm. I told myself it was just my neighbor, someone who worked odd hours and kept to themselves. Nothing unusual about that, but the whispers continued. Every night, always around the same time, between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it was just hello. Sometimes it was longer phrases. Can you hear me? Why will you not answer? I know you are there. I tried to introduce myself to my neighbor. I knocked on the door of 4B multiple times, at different hours of the day. No one ever answered. But once, when I pressed my ear to the door, I heard something inside. Movement. Slow, shuffling movement, like someone dragging their feet across the floor. I asked the building manager about the tenant in 4B. She looked at me strangely. That unit has been empty for 6 months, she said. We have not been able to rent it since the last tenant left. I asked what happened to the last tenant. She did not want to tell me at first, but I pressed her. Finally, she sighed and told me the story. A woman named Catherine Marsh had lived in 4B for 8 years. She was quiet, kept to herself, rarely left the apartment. Neighbors reported that she talked to herself constantly, carrying on conversations with someone no one else could see. One day, Catherine stopped paying rent. The building manager went to check on her. What she found inside the apartment has never been fully explained. Catherine was sitting in a chair in the middle of the living room, facing the wall that connected to my apartment. She was dead, had been for several days, but that was not the disturbing part. The disturbing part was what she had written on the wall. Thousands of words, covering every inch of the surface, written in her own blood.
Hello, 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 can you hear me? Hello, why will you not answer? Hello, hello, hello.
I know you are there. Hello, hello, hello. The coroner ruled her death as natural causes, a heart attack, but no one could explain the writing. No one could explain how she had written so much with so little blood remaining in her body. No one could explain why she had been facing my apartment when she died. The building had the wall repainted. The apartment was cleaned and sanitized, but they could not rent it. Everyone who came to view it reported feeling watched. One potential tenant said she heard whispering coming from inside the closet. I should have moved out. Any sane person would have, but I was stubborn, and like I said, the rent was cheap. I convinced myself that whatever had happened was in the past. Catherine was gone. The whispering was probably just pipes or old building sounds. I could handle it. For a while, it seemed like I was right. The whispers stopped. The breathing stopped. I started sleeping through the night again. Then, I made a mistake. I was rearranging my living room, moving my bookshelf to a different wall. As I pushed it aside, I noticed something strange. There was a small hole in the wall, about the size of a quarter, hidden behind where the shelf had been. It went straight through to the other side. I looked through it without thinking. On the other side was apartment for B. It was dark inside, but I could make out shapes. A chair in the middle of the room. A figure sitting in it. The figure was facing me. Facing the hole. Facing my eye as I peered through. And then it moved. It stood up, slowly, joints cracking with sounds I could hear through the wall. It walked toward me, toward the hole, until I could see nothing but darkness filling my vision. A voice came through the hole. Not a whisper this time. Clear, as if the speaker was standing right next to me. I knew you were there. I stumbled backward, knocking over my bookshelf. When I looked at the wall again, the hole was gone. Not covered, not filled in. Gone. The wall was smooth and unbroken, as if the hole had never existed. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with every light on, watching the wall, waiting for something to happen. At exactly 3 a.m., the knocking started. It came from inside the wall. Not from 4B. Not from my apartment. From inside the wall itself. A slow, rhythmic knocking, moving across the surface like something was crawling through the space between the studs. Then the wall began to bulge. It was subtle at first, a slight bowing outward near the corner. Then it grew more pronounced, the drywall stretching like skin over something trying to push through from the other side. I could see the shape of fingers pressing against the inside of the wall, trying to find a way out. And then Catherine's voice came through, louder than I had ever heard it. "Let me in." I ran. I did not grab anything, did not stop for my phone or wallet or keys. I ran down 4 flights of stairs and out into the Chicago night, and I did not stop until I reached the 24-hour diner 3 blocks away to connect with someone before she died, and that connection has never been broken. I have learned to live with it. The whispers come and go, as long as I do not acknowledge them, as long as I do not answer. She stays behind the walls. But I know that one day, my resolve will weaken. One day, I will be too tired, too lonely, too desperate for any human connection. And I will answer. When that happens, I know exactly what will follow. The hole will appear in my wall. The figure will be waiting on the other side, and Catherine Marsh will finally have someone to talk to. Forever. If you ever move into an old building with suspiciously cheap rent, ask about the previous tenants. Ask why the apartment is available. Ask if anyone has ever died there, and whatever you do, never look through holes in the wall. Some connections, once made, can never be broken. I work as a security guard at the Monarch Hotel in downtown Seattle. It is a beautiful, old building. 22 floors of Art Deco architecture built in 1929. Rich people stay there. Celebrities. Politicians. The kind of guests who expect perfection and silence. My job is simple. Watch the cameras. Walk the halls. Make sure nothing happens. For 3 years, nothing ever did. Then Marcus showed up. Marcus was a new hire, 20 years old, fresh out of community college. He was eager, curious, and he asked too many questions. The other guards warned him about the service elevator on the east side of the building. They told him never to use it after midnight. They told him the stories. He did not listen. The Monarch Hotel has a secret that management does not advertise. In 1947, a woman named Eleanor Vance checked into room 1408 on the 14th floor. She was a widow, recently bereaved, and she came to Seattle to start over. 3 days after checking in, she was found dead in the service elevator, frozen in place between floors 7 and 8. The coroner could not explain her death. There were no marks on her body, no signs of struggle or illness. Her face was locked in an expression of absolute terror, her eyes wide open, her mouth stretched into a silent scream. The official cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest, but everyone who saw her body knew that something else had happened. Something had scared Eleanor Vance to death. After her death, strange things began happening in the service elevator. Guests reported hearing a woman crying between floors. Maintenance workers refused to repair it alone. One bellhop in the 1960s claimed he saw Eleanor standing in the corner of the elevator, her face still frozen in that terrible scream. He quit the next day. The hotel tried to shut down the elevator, but every time they did, things got worse. Lights flickered throughout the building. Guests complained of nightmares. Room 1408 became impossible to rent, because everyone who stayed there reported seeing a woman standing at the foot of their bed at exactly 3 a.m. So the hotel kept the elevator running, and they made a rule. No one uses it after midnight. No exceptions. Marcus thought it was all superstition. Old building, old stories. Nothing more. On his 3rd week, he decided to prove everyone wrong. I was watching the security monitors when I saw him enter the service elevator at 12:47 a.m. He was alone, smiling at the camera, giving a thumbs up like he was about to debunk a myth. I tried to radio him, but he had turned off his walkie-talkie. The elevator doors closed. On the monitor, I watched the floor indicator climb. 1, 2, 3. It stopped at 7. The doors did not open. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute. The elevator remained frozen between floors 7 and 8, exactly where Eleanor Vance had died. I called down to the front desk and told them to send someone to check the shaft. Then I kept watching the monitor, waiting for Marcus to appear. The camera inside the service elevator was old, grainy, black and white. But I could see Marcus clearly. He was standing in the center of the car, his back pressed against the wall, staring at something in the corner. The corner was empty. But Marcus did not think so. His mouth was moving, forming words I could not hear. His face had gone pale. He He was shaking his head, backing away from whatever he saw, pressing himself harder against the wall like he was trying to phase through it. Then he screamed. I could not hear it through the monitor, but I saw it. His mouth stretched open, his eyes went wide, and he screamed with everything he had. He screamed until his face turned red, until the veins in his neck bulged, until he ran out of air, and then he stopped. Marcus stood perfectly still. His arms dropped to his sides, his head tilted slowly to the left, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He stared directly into the camera, but his eyes were wrong. They were not Marcus's eyes anymore. They were empty, hollow, like someone had reached inside him and scooped out everything that made him human. He smiled. It was not a normal smile. It stretched too wide, curling up at the corners in a way that human faces should not bend. He lifted one hand and waved at the camera, a slow, deliberate wave, like a child saying goodbye. Then the elevator dropped. It plummeted from the 7th floor to the basement in less than 2 seconds. The impact was so loud that I heard it from the security office, a thunderous crash that shook the entire building. I ran. I sprinted down 14 flights of stairs to the basement, my heart pounding, my radio screaming with confused voices from other staff members. By the time I reached the elevator shaft, maintenance had already pried open the doors. Marcus was inside. He was alive. He was sitting in the corner of the destroyed elevator car, his legs crossed, his hands folded in his lap. The car was crumpled around him like a crushed soda can, but he did not have a scratch on him. He was still smiling that terrible, impossible smile. When the paramedics tried to move him, he spoke. His voice was different, higher, softer, with an accent that no one recognized. "You should not have come here," Marcus said. "This is my elevator. This is where I wait." They took him to the hospital. The doctors found nothing physically wrong with him, but Marcus never spoke again. Not as himself. Sometimes, late at night, the nurses report hearing him whisper in that strange voice, repeating the same words over and over. Between 7 and 8. Between 7 and 8. That is where I wait. I quit the Monarch Hotel the next week. I could not walk past that elevator without feeling her watching me. The hotel sealed it permanently after Marcus was hospitalized. They welded the doors shut and told guests it was under renovation. But sometimes, when I drive past the building late at night, I look up at the 7th floor. The windows are always dark, except for one. A faint light flickers behind the glass, moving up and down, like something trapped between floors, still waiting for its next passenger. If you ever stay at the Monarch Hotel, take the stairs. Some elevators are not meant to be ridden, and some floors are not meant to be reached. Everyone knows the urban legend about the babysitter and the phone calls coming from inside the house. It's one of the oldest horror stories, passed down through generations of teenagers trying to scare each other. I always thought it was fiction. Then I became a babysitter. My name is Jenna, and I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year, and I had taken a job watching the Patterson kids. The Pattersons lived in a massive house, an old Victorian place with too many rooms and not enough light. Mr. Patterson was a surgeon, Mrs. Patterson a lawyer. Their kids, Emma and Nolan, were 5 and 7. The kids were easy. They went to bed at 8, slept through the night, never gave me trouble. The house was the problem. From my first night, I felt like I was being watched. The hallways were too long, shadows too deep. I expected to see someone standing behind me. The Pattersons had an old rotary phone in the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson said it had been there since they moved in. On my 3rd week, the call started. The first one came at 9:15 p.m. The kids were asleep. The rotary phone in the kitchen began to ring, a shrill, mechanical sound. I answered it. Hello. Silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like someone is listening.
Hello? Is someone there?
A breath, slow and deliberate. Then a voice, low, raspy, barely above a whisper. Chet the children. The line went dead. My heart was racing, but I told myself it was a prank. Kids from school knew I babysat. I walked upstairs and checked on Emma and Nolan. They were both sound asleep, exactly where I had left them. I went back downstairs and tried to forget about it. At 10:30 p.m., the phone rang again. Hello? The same silence. The same breath. Check the children. Who is this? I demanded. This is not funny. A pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time there was something different about it. Something almost amused. I already checked them. They're still sleeping. For now. I dropped the phone. I ran upstairs so fast I nearly tripped on the landing. I threw open Emma's door. She was there, tucked into her bed, her chest rising and falling. I checked Nolan's room. He was there too, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, completely undisturbed. But something was wrong. Nolan's closet door was open. I was certain I had closed it. I always closed it because he was afraid of the dark space inside. I walked toward the closet, my hands shaking. The darkness inside seemed thicker than it should have been, deeper, like it went on forever, instead of ending at a wall of hanging clothes. I reached for the light switch. The phone rang downstairs. I left the closet and ran back to the kitchen. I grabbed the phone before the second ring. Leave me alone. The voice laughed. It was not a human laugh. It was too long, too hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. You should not have looked in the closet, it said. Now he knows. I hung up and called the police. I told them someone was harassing me, that I was alone with 2 children. The dispatch had told me to stay calm, that they would trace the calls and send someone over. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. I did not want to answer, but something compelled me. Hello, the dispatcher's voice came through, but it was shaking. Ma'am, we traced the calls. You need to get the children and leave the house immediately. Do you understand? Why? Where are the calls coming from? A pause. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. The calls are coming from the upstairs extension. Someone is in the house with you. I do not remember dropping the phone. I do not remember running upstairs. I only remember grabbing Emma, screaming for Nolan, and carrying both children down the stairs as fast as my legs could move. Nolan's closet door was wide open as we passed it. Inside, I saw something, a shape, tall and thin, pressed against the back wall, watching us leave. It waved. The police found no one in the house. No fingerprints, no evidence of forced entry, nothing. The upstairs extension was in the master bedroom, and it had been disconnected for years. There was no way anyone could have made calls from it. The Pattersons moved out a month later. Mrs. Patterson told me that Nolan had started having nightmares about a man in his closet. A tall, thin man who whispered to him at night. He says he is waiting, Nolan told his mother. He says he is waiting for the babysitter to come back. I never babysat again. I never answered an unknown call again. And every night, before I go to sleep, I check every closet. Because some calls do come from inside the house, and whoever is making them is still waiting. If you drive Route 9 through the mountains of West Virginia late at night, you might see her. A young woman standing on the side of the road, wearing a white dress, her thumb raised for a ride. She looks cold, shivering in the darkness, desperate for someone to stop. Do not stop for her. My name is Tyler, and I made the mistake of stopping once. It was 3 years ago, but I remember every detail. Some things you cannot forget, no matter how hard you try. I was driving home from my brother's wedding in Virginia. It was a long drive, nearly 6 hours, and I had left later than I planned. By the time I hit Route 9, it was past midnight. The road was empty, winding through thick forest, with no street lights, no houses, no signs of civilization. That is when I saw her. She appeared in my headlights like a ghost, standing on the shoulder of the road, her white dress glowing against the darkness. She was young, maybe early 20s, with long dark hair and pale skin. Her thumb was raised, and she was staring directly at my car with an expression I could not read. I should have kept driving. Every instinct told me something was wrong, but she looked so cold, so helpless. I could not leave her out there alone. Primera pult, over. She walked to my passenger door and opened it. Up close, she was beautiful, but there was something off about her. Her skin was too pale, almost translucent. Her eyes were dark, so dark I could not see where the pupils ended and the iris began. And she was not shivering anymore. "Thank you for stopping," she said. Her voice was soft, melodic, like a song I had heard somewhere before. I had been waiting for so long. I asked her where she was going. She smiled and said she just needed to get to the other side. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I tried to make small talk, asked her name, asked what she was doing out so late. She gave short answers. Her name was Sarah. She was going home. She had been walking for a very long time. Then she asked me a question that made my blood run cold. Do you believe in ghosts? I laughed nervously and said I was not sure. She nodded, still smiling, and turned to look out the window. I did not believe in them either, she said. Not until I became one. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I told myself she was joking, just a strange girl with a dark sense of humor. But when I glanced over at her, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. Her reflection was not in the window. The glass showed the dark forest outside, the faint glow of my dashboard lights. But no, Sarah. The passenger seat appeared empty. I looked at her. She was still smiling, but now there was something sad in her eyes. You see it now? She said. They always see it eventually. I could not speak. My throat had closed up. My heart was pounding so hard. She reached over and touched my hand. Her fingers were ice cold, colder than anything I had ever felt. Like touching frozen metal in the dead of winter. I died on this road, she said. 43 years ago, a man picked me up, just like you did. But he was not kind. He did not want to help me. Her eyes changed. The sadness disappeared, replaced by something darker, something angry. Urt. Me. He left me on the side of the road to die, and now I wait here every night, looking for him, looking for his car. I told her I was not that man. I told her I just wanted to help. She studied my face for a long moment, her cold fingers still wrapped around my hand. I know, she finally said. That is why I am letting you go. She released my hand and opened the passenger door. The cold night air rushed in, carrying the smell of pine and damp earth. She stepped out of the car and stood on the shoulder of the road, exactly where I had found her. Drive fast, she said. Do not stop again, and do not look in your rearview mirror until you reach the bottom of the mountain. I did not need to be told. I floored the accelerator and drove faster than I had ever driven in my life. The road twisted and turned, but I did not slow down. I did not look back, but I heard something behind me. The sound of footsteps, impossibly fast, keeping pace with my car. The sound of something running on the road, something that should not have been able to move that fast. And then I heard a voice, whispering directly into my ear. Even though she was no longer in the car, he's still out there. You know, the man who killed me. He still drives this road, and one night, I will find him. I reached the bottom of the mountain and pulled into the first gas station I saw. I sat in my car for an hour, shaking, trying to convince myself that what I had experienced was not real. When I finally looked in my rearview mirror, I saw something that I will never forget. A handprint on my back seat, small, delicate, and made of frost. I sold that car the next week. I have never driven Route 9 again, but sometimes, late at night, I hear her voice in my dreams, whispering the same words over and over. I am still waiting. If you ever see a hitchhiker on Route 9, keep driving. She is not looking for a ride. She is looking for someone who wronged her a long time ago. And if you stop, you might become part of her search forever. I need to tell someone what happened to me last October. I've tried telling my friends. I've tried telling my family. Nobody believes me. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I swear on everything I love. Every word of this is true. My name is Daniel. I'm 27 years old, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. If you've ever been here, you know how beautiful the Blue Ridge Mountains are, especially in the fall. The leaves turn orange and red. The air gets that perfect crispness, and the fog rolls through the valleys like something out of a painting. But beauty, I've learned, can hide terrible things. Last October, my buddy Marcus and I decided to rent a cabin for the weekend. We'd both been working insane hours. Me at a warehouse, him at a tire shop, and we just needed to decompress. Marcus found this listing online. It wasn't on Airbnb or VRBO. It was on some obscure website for private cabin rentals. The price was absurdly cheap. Like $40 a night cheap. The photos showed a cozy little A-frame cabin tucked deep in the woods. No reviews, but Marcus said that just meant it was a hidden gem. We should have known better. We drove up on a Friday afternoon. GPS took us down a long series of back roads that got narrower and narrower, until we were on a one-lane gravel path surrounded by dense forest. The trees were so thick, they blocked out most of the sky. My phone lost signal about 20 minutes before we arrived. Marcus's did too. We joked about it at the time. Real off-the-grid stuff, he said, laughing. The cabin was at the very end of the road. The road literally stopped, just dirt and trees beyond it. The cabin itself looked older than the photo suggested. The wood was darker, more weathered. The porch sagged slightly, but it was livable. We grabbed our bags and went inside. The interior was simple. One main room with a kitchen area, a couch, a wood-burning stove, and a loft upstairs. There was a small bathroom in the back. No TV, no Wi-Fi. Obviously no cell signal. Just us, some card games, a cooler full of beer, and the sounds of the mountains. The first night was fine. Better than fine, actually. We made a fire, played poker, told stories, and eventually passed out around midnight. I slept hard. No dreams, just black, heavy sleep. Saturday was normal too, mostly. We hiked a trail behind the cabin, cooked burgers on an old charcoal grill we found on the porch, and just enjoyed the silence. But when the sun went down that second night, things changed. It started around 9 p.m. Marcus and I were sitting on the porch, drinking beers, when we heard a sound from the woods to our left. It was a knocking. Not like a woodpecker, more rhythmic. More a deliberate 3 slow knocks. A pause, then 3 more. It sounded like it was coming from maybe 50 yards into the tree line. The hell is that? Marcus. Said. I shrugged it off. Probably a deer or something hitting a tree. But deer don't knock in patterns. The knocking continued for about 10 minutes, then stopped abruptly. We went back inside and locked the door. I don't know why we locked it. We hadn't locked it the night before. But something felt different now. The air felt heavier. Around 11 p.m., I was lying on my cot in the loft, reading a book by flashlight, when I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy footsteps. They moved from one end of the porch to the other, then stopped right in front of the door. Marcus, I whispered. He was on the other cot, scrolling through downloaded photos on his phone. He looked up at me. He'd heard it too. We both lay perfectly still. Then the doorknob rattled, not violently, slowly, like someone was testing it, seeing if it would open. It rattled for about 5 seconds, then stopped. Marcus grabbed a hatchet we'd brought for firewood and crept to the window. He peered through the curtain. After a long moment, he turned back to me. His face was white. There's someone standing at the edge of the porch, he whispered. Just standing there. I moved to the window and looked. He was right. There was a figure at the far end of the porch, just beyond where the porch light reached. I could make out the shape of a person, tall, thin, standing completely still. They were facing the cabin, facing us. Hey! Marcus shouted through the window. Who are you? What do you want? The figure didn't move. Didn't respond. Didn't flinch. We watched for what felt like 10 minutes. The figure never moved. Not a single muscle. It just stood there in the dark like a mannequin. Eventually, Marcus sold. He was going to open the door and confront whoever it was. I told him, absolutely not. We argued in whispers. Finally, I convinced him to wait until morning. We didn't sleep that night. We sat in the loft, backs against the wall, watching the windows. Around 3 a.m., I heard the knocking again. This time it was closer. Much closer. It sounded like it was right underneath the cabin. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. Over and over. Then, the worst part. A voice. Faint, barely audible, coming from somewhere outside. It said, "Marcus's name," not shouted, whispered, but loud enough to carry through the walls. Marcus grabbed my arm so hard it left a bruise. "We're leaving," he said. "Right now." We grabbed our keys and nothing else. Marcus went first with the hatchet. I was right behind him. We bolted out the front door, off the porch, and sprinted to his truck. The figure was gone. The knocking had stopped. The woods were silent. Completely, unnervingly silent. Marcus turned the key. The engine sputtered but didn't start. He tried again. Nothing. Third time, it caught. He threw it in reverse and we tore out of there. Gravel spraying everywhere. As we reached the end of the gravel path and turned onto the paved road, I looked in the side mirror. And this is the part I can never shake. The part that keeps me up at night. There were 3 figures now, standing in the road behind us. All tall. All thin. All perfectly still. And I swear they were smiling. We drove 2 hours straight without stopping. When we got home, we sat in his truck in my driveway until the sun came up. Neither of us said a word. I went back to that website a few days later to find the listing. The site was gone, not the listing. The entire website, like it never existed. I searched for the cabin address. Nothing. I even drove back to Ridge Road a week later in broad daylight. I found the gravel path. I followed it to the end. There was no cabin, just an empty clearing with dead grass and a circle of blackened stones where a fire had been. But in the center of that clearing, stuck in the ground, was a wooden post, and nailed to it was a piece of paper, yellowed with age. It read, "You came back. I have never returned." If you've ever been to St. John's, Newfoundland, you know 2 things. The wind never stops, and the fog has a mind of its own. I grew up there, born and raised on a street called Holloway, just a short walk from Signal Hill. I thought I knew every inch of that city. Every alley, every harbor step, every crumbling stone wall along the waterfront. But there are things in St. John's that you don't find on a map. This happened to me 3 years ago. I was 24 at the time, working nights as a security guard at a small office building near the harbor. The job was mind-numbing 12-hour shifts from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., sitting in a tiny booth, watching empty hallways on monitors. Nothing ever happened. That was the whole point of the job. Nothing was supposed to happen. My routine was simple. Every 2 hours, I did a walkthrough of the building 3 floors, the basement, and the parking structure. The rest of the time, I sat in the booth, drank coffee, and listened to podcasts. One night in late November, I was doing my midnight walkthrough. The building was empty, as usual. I did the 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, then I went down to the basement. The basement was mostly storage, old filing cabinets, broken furniture, Christmas decorations the tenants never picked up. It was always cold down there, even by Newfoundland standards. I was halfway through the basement when I noticed something odd. One of the storage room doors was open, room B7. I knew I had checked it at 10 p.m. and it was closed and locked. I had the only key, and the tenants didn't have after-hours access. I pulled out my flashlight and approached the door slowly. Inside, the room looked normal: shelves, boxers, nothing out of place. But there was a smell, a damp, briny smell, like seawater and rotting fish. It was overpowering. I covered my nose and swept the room with my light. In the far corner, on the floor, there was a puddle of water, not a leak from the ceiling. The ceiling was dry. The water was pooled in a shape that almost looked like wet footprints leading to the wall, and then stopping, as if someone had walked straight through the concrete. I locked the door and went back to my booth. I told myself it was a plumbing issue. Old buildings have weird leaks. It meant nothing. The next night, I was watching the monitors around 2 a.m. when I saw something on camera 6, the parking structure, ground level. A figure was standing in the far corner of the garage, just standing there. They were wearing a yellow raincoat with the hood pulled up. I couldn't see their face. I keyed my radio, even though there was no one to call. Then I zoomed the camera in. The figure didn't move. They stood perfectly still, arms at their sides, facing the camera, facing me. I watched them for 5 full minutes. No movement, not even a sway. I thought maybe it was a mannequin or a prank, some kids from the university messing around. I grabbed my flashlight and headed down to the parking structure. When I got there, the corner was empty. No figure. No yellow raincoat, but the ground where the figure had been standing was wet. A small puddle of water, just like the one in storage room B7. And that same smell salt and decay. I went back to the monitors. I rewound the footage. This is the part that made my stomach drop. On the playback, the figure was there standing in the corner at 2:03 a.m. At 2:06 a.m., right around the time I left the booth, the figure turned its head slowly toward the exit, the direction I would be coming from. Then it walked calmly out of frame, not in a hurry. Calmly, like it knew I was coming and simply chose to leave before I arrived. Over the next 2 weeks, the man in the yellow raincoat appeared on my cameras 6 more times, always between 1 and 4 a.m. Always standing still in a different part of the building. Each time, by the time I got there, the figure was gone. Each time, there was a puddle of cold, salt water left behind. I told my supervisor. He checked the footage and saw nothing. He said the cameras must have a glitch. He looked at me like I was losing it. But I saved the footage. I watched it on my phone later. The figure was clearly there. I don't know why my supervisor couldn't see it. The last night I worked that job was December 14th. I was doing my 2 a.m. walkthrough. I came down to the basement, rounded the corner toward the storage rooms, and stopped dead in my tracks. The man in the yellow raincoat was standing at the end of the hallway, 20 feet away from me. This time, I could see more detail. The raincoat was old, not modern. It looked like something a fisherman from the 1940s would wear. It was dripping wet, water pooling on the tile floor beneath it. The hood was up, and inside the hood was shadow, pure black shadow. No face, no features, just dark. I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't work. My flashlight started flickering. The temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath in thick white clouds. The figure raised one arm slowly. It pointed at me. Not aggressively, almost sadly, like it was trying to tell me something. Or warn me. Then it spoke. One word, in a voice that sounded like it was coming from underwater. Gurgling, wet, distant. Leave, I ran. I ran out of that basement, out of the building, into my car, and I drove home. I called my supervisor the next morning and quit. He didn't argue. A week later, out of morbid curiosity, I researched the building. It took some digging at the local archives. But I found something. In 1953, a fisherman named Alvaro disappeared during a storm off the coast of St. John's. His boat was found capsized. His body was never recovered. Before the office building was built, the lot was a fish processing warehouse. Albert Rowe had worked there. The archival photo of Albert showed him standing on the docks. He was wearing a yellow raincoat. I've never gone back to that part of the harbor. Some nights, when the fog rolls in thick and the wind howls off the Atlantic, I swear I can smell salt water in my apartment, even though I live miles from the shore. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear a wet, distant voice say one word: leave. There's a lane in Whitby that most people walk right past without a second thought. It's called Penfold Lane. It runs between 2 old brick buildings near the east side of town, not far from the famous 199 steps that lead up to the Abbey. During the day, it's just a narrow, cobblestoned alley. Unremarkable, a bit damp, smelling of moss and old stone. Tourists pass it constantly on their way to the Bram Stoker Memorial Bench or the Whalebone Arch. But if you walk to the very end of Penfold Lane, past the last doorway, past the rusted drain pipe, past the spot where the cobblestones turn uneven and cracked, there is a door, an old wooden door set into the stone wall. It has no handle, no keyhole, no markings, just dark, ancient wood with iron rivets, as if it's been there for centuries. I first heard about the door from my grandmother. I'm Elle. I'm 26, and I grew up in Whitby. My grandmother, Mary, was born there in 1941 and lived her entire life within walking distance of the harbor. She was a storyteller, the kind of woman who could make you believe anything with the look in her eyes and the tone of her voice. When I was 12, she told me about Penfold Lane. She said the door had been there as long as anyone could remember. No one knew what was behind it. No one had ever seen it open. But sometimes, laddie, at night, you could hear something behind it. What kind of something? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the gray sky and said, scratching, like fingernails on wood. From the inside. Primera, wa, ese 12. I was terrified. I stayed away from Penfold Lane for years. But time has a way of dulling fear. By the time I was in university, studying history at York, I'd convinced myself that my grandmother's story was just a local legend. Old towns like Whitby are full of them. The Abbey, the graveyard, Dracula, the whole place thrives on ghost stories. Penfold Lane was just another one. Then my grandmother died. It was February, 3 years ago. She went peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82. While sorting through her belongings at her cottage, I found a leather journal in her bedside drawer. It was old, the pages yellowed and brittle, and it wasn't her handwriting. It belonged to someone named Thomas Birch, and it was dated 1897. Thomas Birch, from what I could gather, was a stonemason who worked in Whitby in the late 1800s. His journal was mostly mundane records of jobs, payments, weather complaints. But the last several entries were different. In October 1897, Thomas wrote about being hired to seal a doorway at the end of a lane near the East Cliff. He didn't name the lane, but the description matched Penfold Lane exactly. He said a local priest had commissioned the work and insisted that the door be sealed permanently, no handle, no keyhole, no way to open it. Thomas asked what was behind the door. The priest told him it was a staircase that led down into a cellar beneath the old buildings. Then why seal it? Thomas asked. The priest's answer, as Thomas recorded it, was this: because what went down those stairs came back up wrong. Thomas sealed the door. Iron rivets. No handle. No keyhole, just as it appears today, over 100 years later. But his journal entries didn't stop there. In the weeks that followed, Thomas wrote about hearing sounds when he passed the lane at night. A faint scratching, a tapping. He described it as rhythmic, almost patient, like something waiting. His final entry was dated November 3rd, 1897. It was short and barely legible, as though written in a hurry. It said, "The door was open this morning. I know it was sealed. I sealed it myself. It was open 6 inches. There were marks on the cobblestones. Drag marks. Going out. God forgive me." I looked inside. The staircase goes down farther than any cellar should. I could not see the bottom, but I could hear breathing. I am going to seal it again. I will use more iron this time. I pray it holds. That was the last entry. There was nothing after. I researched Thomas Birch in the Whitby archives. He disappeared on November 5th, 1897. 2 days after that final entry, no body was ever found. His tools were discovered at the end of Penfold Lane, scattered on the cobblestones. The door was sealed shut. After reading the journal, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went to Penfold Lane. It was a Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. The town was quiet. A light rain was falling. I walked the length of the lane, my phone's flashlight cutting through the dark, until I reached the end. The door was there, just as I remembered from childhood, just as my grandmother described. Old, dark wood. Iron rivets, no handle, no keyhole. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. The rain tapped softly on the cobblestones around me. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just an old sealed door in an old town. There was nothing behind it. Nothing. Then I heard it, a scratching sound. Faint, rhythmic, coming from behind the door. My blood turned to ice. I stood frozen, phone trembling in my hand, and listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. A pause, then again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Like fingernails dragging slowly across the inside of the wood. and then end. This is what broke me. The door moved, just barely, a fraction of an inch, outward, as if something on the other side was pushing against it, testing it. The iron rivets groaned softly under the pressure. I ran down Penfold Lane, out onto the main road, and I didn't stop until I was inside my car with the doors locked and the engine running. I sat there, gasping, rain streaking down the windshield, and tried to convince myself I had imagined it. The wind, the old wood expanding in the damp. A rat, maybe. Anything rational. Anything normal. But I knew what I heard. And I knew what I saw. I went back one more time. In daylight, the next morning, I brought a friend, Jack, who thought I was being dramatic. We walked to the end of the lane. The door was there. Sealed. Unchanged. Jack knocked on it and laughed. "Solid as a rock," he said, but I noticed something he didn't. Something that made my legs weak and my vision blur. On the cobblestones in front of the door, there were marks. Long, thin scratches in the stone. Drag marks leading away from the door. They extended about 4 feet, then stopped. Fresh. The stone dust was still loose. Something had come out, however briefly. Something had pushed that door open, dragged itself out onto the cobblestones, and then, what? Gone back inside, gone somewhere else. He took photos. When I looked at them later on my laptop, the marks were visible. But in one photo, the one I took of the door itself, there was something in the gap between the door and the stone frame. A shadow that didn't match the lighting. A shape that, if I squinted, looked almost like fingers. Long, pale fingers curled around the edge of the wood. I deleted the photos. I don't know why. Maybe because some part of me didn't want proof. Proof would mean it was real. And if it was real, then something is behind that door. Something has been behind that door for over 100 years. Scratching, waiting, testing, and sometimes getting out. My grandmother kept Thomas Birch's journal for a reason. I think she knew. I think she'd heard the scratching too. I think a lot of people in Whitby have, over the years. They just don't talk about it. You learn not to in old towns. You learn to walk past certain lanes, avoid certain doors, and never, ever go looking for answers in the dark. I still live in Whitby. I walk past Penfold Lane almost every day. I never look down it. I never walk to the end. But some nights, when the wind is quiet and the rain has stopped and the town is perfectly still, I hear something carried on the air from the direction of the east cliff. Scratch. 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 And I pull my curtains shut, and I pray the iron holds. My name is Daniel Marsh, and I work the night shift at the Cedar Hollow gas station off Route 33 in West Virginia. If you've ever driven through that part of the state, you know how isolated it gets. Miles and miles of nothing but black trees, fog, and winding roads that seem to lead nowhere. The gas station sat at the bottom of a hill, surrounded by dense woods on 3 sides. The only light for miles was the buzzing fluorescent glow of our canopy lights over the pumps. I took the job because it paid decent, and I was a college dropout with no better options. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most nights, I'd see maybe 5 or 6 customers total. Truckers, mostly. Sometimes a lost tourist. The rest of the time, I sat behind the counter reading paperback novels or watching videos on my phone. It was boring. Painfully boring until it wasn't. Nightingale. It started on a Tuesday night in late October, around 2:15 a.m. The security camera feed on my monitor flickered, just for a second. I glanced up and noticed something on camera. The one that faces the tree line behind the building near the dumpsters. There was a shape standing just beyond the edge of the light. It was tall. It was tall. Unnaturally tall. I squinted at the grainy black and white image and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It looked like a person standing perfectly still, but the proportions were wrong. The arms were too long. The head seemed tilted at an angle that would be uncomfortable for any normal human being. I watched for maybe 30 seconds. It didn't move, not even slightly. I figured it was a trick of the light, maybe a weird shadow from a branch or a bag caught on something. I went back to my book. About 20 minutes later, I heard a knock on the glass front door. I looked up. Nobody was there. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars at the pumps. No headlights on the road. I stood up and walked to the door, pressing my face against the glass and looking left and right. Nothing. Just the hum of the lights and the chirping of crickets. I returned to the counter and glanced at the monitor again. Camera 3. The figure was closer now. It had moved from the tree line to about 15 feet behind the building. I could see it more clearly now. It was definitely humanoid, but it was wearing something dark, like a long coat or a cloak. Its face was obscured, and it was still standing perfectly. Impossibly still. My heart began to beat faster. I grabbed the store phone and called my manager. Rick. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. I left a message telling him something weird was going on and that I might need to close early. At 3 a.m., the knocking came again. This time, it wasn't at the front door. It was at the back door, the steel utility door in the stockroom that led out to the dumpster area. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Bang, bang, bang. Then, silence. I did not go to that door. I stood behind the counter, staring at the monitor. Camera 3 now showed nothing. The figure was gone. But it had been standing in the direction of that back door. I checked every camera. The parking lot empty. The pumps empty. The side of the building empty. Then camera 1, the one Ahmed at the front entrance, showed something that made my blood freeze. There were handprints on the glass front door. From the outside, but they were smeared downward, like someone or something had pressed both hands against the glass and slowly dragged them down. The prints were dark, not dirt. Something darker. I didn't leave the counter for the rest of the night. I sat there with a box cutter in my hand and every light in the building turned on. At 7:02 a.m., my coworker Shella arrived for the morning shift. I told her everything. She thought I was messing with her until she saw the handprints on the glass. She stopped, laughing. I checked the security footage later that day with Rick. The cameras had recorded everything. The figure at the tree line, its movement closer to the building, and then something the live feed hadn't shown me in real time. At 3:07 a.m., 2 minutes after the knocking, camera 231 on the side of the building caught the figure walking along the wall toward the front. It moved in a way that I can only describe as wrong. Its legs moved, but they bent in directions legs aren't supposed to bend. Like a marionette, being controlled by someone who didn't quite understand how human bodies work. It reached the front door. It pressed its hands against the glass, and then it turned its head slowly and looked directly into the camera. The face was pale, featureless. No eyes, no nose, just a mouth. And the mouth was open. Rick deleted the footage. He told me never to talk about it. He said the last guy who worked nights had seen the same thing and had quit without notice. He said the guy before that one had also quit. He told me that whatever it was, it had never come inside. It just watches. He said it just knocks. I quit the next day. But here's the thing that still haunts me, the thing that keeps me up at night and makes me leave every light on in my apartment. 2 weeks after I quit, I was lying in bed in my apartment in Elkins, 40 miles from that gas station. It was around 2:30 a.m. and I heard it. 3 slow knocks on my bedroom window. Bang, bang, bang. I live on the 2nd floor. I never looked. I pulled the covers over my head like a child and I didn't move until morning. When I checked the window in the daylight, there was nothing there. No marks, no prints, nothing. But sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is quiet, I hear something outside that window. Not knocking, just breathing. Slow, wet breathing. Like something standing just on the other side of the glass, waiting for me to look. I have never looked. And I never will. My name is Jenna Whitford. And what happened to me and my friends in the winter of 2019 in Northern Ontario is something none of us talk about anymore. Not because we've forgotten, because we agreed, all four of us, that talking about it might make it come back. It was supposed to be a simple weekend trip. My friend Marcus had inherited a cabin from his grandfather near a tiny unincorporated community. About 3 hours north of Sudbury, there was barely a town, just a handful of old houses, a closed general store, and logging roads that disappeared into forests so thick you couldn't see the sky. Marcus, myself, our friend Tara, and her boyfriend Liam drove up on a Friday afternoon. The cabin was old, but solid. Log walls, a wood-burning stove, no internet, and barely any cell service. We thought it was charming, rustic, the kind of place you go to disconnect. We unloaded our bags, got the stove going, and settled in for a night of board games and cheap wine. The first night was fine. Normal. We stayed up until about 1 a.m., then went to bed. Marcus and I took the 2 small bedrooms. Tara and Liam slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. The cabin was warm, the woods were quiet, and I fell asleep quickly. I woke up at 4:11 a.m. I remember the exact time because I checked my phone. Something had woken me, but I couldn't figure out what. I lay in the dark, listening. Wind in the trees, the creak of the cabin settling, and then I heard it. Footsteps. On the roof. Not an animal, not the skittering of a squirrel or raccoon. These were deliberate, heavy footsteps, like a person walking slowly across the roof. Step. 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 They moved from one end to the other, paused, and then moved back. I sat up in bed and held my breath. The footsteps stopped directly above me, and then there was a scratching sound, like fingernails on wood, slow and deliberate, dragging across the roof planks directly over my head. I got up and went to the living room. Tara was sitting upright on the pull-out couch. She looked at me with wide eyes and whispered, "You hear it too?" Liam was still asleep. Marcus came out of his room a moment later. He'd heard it as well. We stood in the living room in the dark, listening. The scratching had stopped. The footsteps had stopped. Everything was silent. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and said he was going outside to check. Tara begged him not to. I didn't say anything because part of me wanted to know what was up. There, he put on his boots and coat, opened the front door, and stepped out into the snow. Tara and I watched from the window. He walked out about 30 feet from the cabin and turned around, shining the flashlight up at the roof. He stood there for a long time. Then he came back inside. His face was white. "There's nothing on the roof," he said, "but there are footprints in the snow. On the ground, all around the cabin. Bare footprints, and it's -20 out there. None have slept for the rest of the night. In the morning, we checked outside. Marcus was right. There were footprints. Human-looking footprints, with visible toes, in the snow all around the cabin. They circled the building over and over, creating a worn path. And they didn't lead anywhere. They didn't come from the woods, and they didn't go back to the woods. They just circled. Liam, who had slept through everything, thought we were pranking him until he saw the tracks himself. He got quiet after that. We decided to stay one more night. I don't know why. Maybe we were too proud to admit we were scared. Maybe we thought there was a rational explanation. Whatever the reason, it was a mistake. The second night, we all stayed in the living room together. Nobody wanted to be alone. We kept the fire going and left a lantern on. Around 3 a.m., Tara shook me awake. I had dozed off in a chair. She pointed at the window, not pressed against it, set back slightly, like someone standing a foot away from the glass and leaning in. The face was pale, almost gray, and gaunt. The eyes were open, but completely black. Not dark brown, not shadowed, but black, like empty sockets filled with ink. The mouth was slightly open, and it was smiling. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Tara was gripping my arm so hard her nails broke the skin. We stared at the face, and the face stared back at us. Then it tilted its head, slowly, like a dog hearing a strange sound, and the smile widened, It widened past what a human mouth should be able to do. The corners of the lips stretched toward the ears, revealing dark gums and teeth that were too long and too narrow. Marcus woke up. He saw it. He threw a boot at the window, and the face pulled back into the darkness. We heard footsteps fast, running footsteps across the porch, and then up the wall of the cabin. Up the wall, onto the roof. The running footsteps crossed the roof, and then stopped. Then the scratching began again. But this time it wasn't just above one room. It was everywhere. The walls, the floor beneath us, the ceiling, like dozens of hands scratching at the wood from every direction. Liam started screaming. Tara was crying. Marcus grabbed the fireplace poker and stood in the middle of the room. I crouched behind the couch with my hands over my ears. It lasted for 6 minutes. I counted every second, then it stopped. All at once. Like someone had flipped a switch. Total silence. Not even the wind. We didn't wait for morning. We packed our bags in under 3 minutes. Got in the car and drove. The headlights cut through the darkness, and the snow-covered road stretched ahead of us like a white tunnel. Nobody spoke for the entire drive. About 40 minutes into the drive, Tara, who was sitting in the back seat, said something quietly. "It's following us." I turned around. Through the rear window, far behind us on the dark road, there was a shape. Running. On all fours. Keeping pace with the car. Marcus was doing 80 kilometers per hour on a snow-covered logging road, and this thing was keeping pace. Marcus pressed the gas. The car Liam was praying under his breath. I watched the shape in the mirror until we hit the main highway and merged with the sparse early morning traffic. It was gone. We never went back. Marcus eventually sold the property to a logging company. He never told them what happened. I've looked online for anything about that area, any local legends, any reports. I found almost nothing. Just one post on an old Canadian outdoors forum from 2007. A hunter describing bare footprints circling his campsite in northern Ontario. His post ended with one line that I will never forget. Whatever it was, it walked around my tent all night, and when the sun came up, the footprints led into the lake. It's February. The lake is frozen. There was no hole in the ice. My name's Oliver Baines, and I used to work for Transport for London as a station attendant at one of the older underground stations in central London. I'm not going to name the exact station because I signed paperwork when I left and I don't want legal trouble. But if you ride the tube regularly, you've probably passed through it. And if you've ever felt a sudden chill on a particular platform, the kind that hits your chest and makes you want to leave immediately, then you've probably felt what I'm about to describe. I started working there in 2017. The station is old. Victorian era. Old. The tunnels are narrow. The tiling is original in some sections. And there are parts of the station that are closed off to the public and have been for decades. Sealed corridors. Bricked up passageways. Rooms that don't appear on any modern schematic. Every old tube station has them. Most of them are harmless. Old storage areas. Abandoned platforms from line restructures. Wartime shelters. But this station had something else. The other attendants told me about it during my first week. They called her the woman on platform 9. They said she appeared late at night, always after the last train, always on the same platform, always in the same spot, near the far end, where the tunnel curves into darkness. I laughed it off. Every tube station has ghost stories. It's part of the culture. The London Underground is one of the oldest metro systems in the world, and hundreds of people have died in those tunnels. Of course, there are stories, but the other attendants weren't laughing. A man named Gerald, who had worked at the station for over 20 years, pulled me aside one evening and told me something that stuck with me. "If you're doing final checks on that platform after close," he said, "and you see a woman standing at the far end, do not speak to her. Do not approach her. Turn around and walk away. Tell the control room the platform is clear and go home." I asked him what would happen if I approached her. He just shook his head and said, "Paul approached her. Paul doesn't work here anymore. Paul doesn't work anywhere anymore." I didn't know who Paul was. I asked around. Nobody wanted to talk about him. I found out later from an outside friend who worked in TfL admin that a station attendant named Paul Dorsey had suffered a severe mental breakdown in 2014. He was found sitting on the platform at 3 a.m., 2 hours after the station had closed, staring at the tunnel wall and muttering the same phrase over and over. He was unresponsive. He was taken to hospital and eventually committed to a psychiatric facility. As far as I know, he never recovered. For the first few months, I didn't see anything unusual. My shifts rotated, and I wasn't always on closing duty. But in March 2018, I pulled a late shift and was tasked with doing the final walkthrough of the platforms before lockup. I made my way down to the platform. It was empty. The lights were on their low nighttime setting, casting everything in a dim yellowish haze. The electronic departure boards were blank. The air was still and cold, carrying the familiar metallic smell of the underground. I walked the length of the platform, checking for stragglers. It's not uncommon for a drunk or a rough sleeper to hide and try to stay the night. As I neared the far end, where the platform narrows and the tunnel mouth opens into blackness, I felt it. The chill that Gerald had described, it hit my chest like stepping into a freezer. My breath clouded in front of me, despite the station not being that cold. Primera stopped. I looked down the platform, and she was there. She was standing about 20 feet ahead of me, right at the edge of the platform, facing the tunnel. She was wearing a dark dress, old-fashioned, long, with a high collar. Her hair was dark and pinned up. She was perfectly still. My first instinct was professional. "Excuse me, the station is closed. You need to." I stopped myself. Gerald's words flashed through my mind. "Do not speak to her. Do not approach her." I stood frozen. She hadn't moved, hadn't reacted to my voice. She just stood there, facing the tunnel, as if waiting for a train that would never come. Then she turned her head, not her body, just her head. It rotated slowly toward me, and I saw her face. It was pale, not white, but gray, like old newspaper. Her eyes were open and they were looking at me. But they weren't right. They were too large, too dark, and they didn't blink. Her mouth moved. She was saying something. No sound came out, but I could read the shapes her lips were making. The same phrase, over and over. "Come here. Come here. Come here." Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were filled with concrete. My hands were shaking. The cold was getting worse. I could feel it seeping through my uniform, through my skin, into my bones. She took a step toward me. Then another. Her movement was fluid, but unnatural, like a video playing at slightly the wrong speed. Too smooth. No bounce in her step, like she was gliding on rails. That broke the spell. I turned and ran. I ran down the platform, up the stairs, through the corridors, and into the staff office. I slammed the door behind me and collapsed into a chair. My hands were blue. Not from cold, they were actually tinged blue, as if the blood had drained from them. I told Gerald the next day. It just nodded. "Now you know," he said. I saw her 3 more times over the following year. Always the same. Always at the far end of the platform. Always after the last train. Always mouthing those words. Each time, I followed Gerald's advice. I turned around and walked away. I reported the platform as clear. But the last time, the time that made me quit, was different. It was November 2018. I was doing my walkthrough. I reached the platform and felt the chill immediately. I looked toward the far end. She was there. Same dress. Same position. Facing the tunnel. I started to turn away, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. She wasn't at the far end of the platform. She was in the middle. She was closer than she had ever been before. I turned to leave, and she was at the top of the stairs, standing right there, at the exit, blocking my way, 20 feet in front of me. She had moved instantaneously, impossibly, from the middle of the platform to the top of the stairs in the time it took me to turn around. Her face was clearer now. I could see details I wished I couldn't. Her skin wasn't just gray, it was textured, rough, like stone. Her eyes weren't just dark, they were hollow. Empty spaces where eyes should be, but deep, deeper than a skull should allow. Like looking into two tiny tunnels. It went back and back and back forever, and her mouth was open, wide open, wider than before, and 'tis time I could hear her. Not with my ears inside my head, a whisper that rattled around my skull like a marble in a jar. You looked, you looked, you looked. You always look. I screamed. I don't remember what happened next with perfect clarity. I know I ran past her, or through her. Because there was a moment of absolute cold. The worst cold I have ever felt. Like being submerged in ice water. And then I was through, and I was running up the stairs and through the gate and out into the London night. I called in sick the next day. And the day after, and then I submitted my resignation. My manager called me. He didn't ask why. He just said, I understand. You're not the first. I still ride the tube sometimes. I have to. It's London, but I never take the last train. And I never, ever look toward the dark end of the platform. Because I know she's there. She's always there. Standing at the edge where the light ends and the tunnel begins. Mouthing those words into the silence. Waiting for someone to come close enough. And I know now what happened to Paul Dorsey. He didn't approach her. She approached him, and whatever she showed him in those deep, hollow eyes, whatever he saw when he looked into those endless, dark tunnels in her skull, it was enough to take his mind away forever. Some nights, when I'm lying in bed in my flat, I hear it. That whisper, not from outside, not from another room, from inside my own head. Quiet, patient. You looked. You always look. I'm starting to think that seeing her even once is enough. That she doesn't need you to come to her. She just needs you to see her. And once you do, some part of her stays with you. A splinter of cold in your chest. A whisper in the back of your mind. A shadow in your peripheral vision when you're standing on a platform and the train hasn't come yet and the tunnel is dark and quiet. I moved out of London last year. I live in the countryside now. No underground. No tunnels. No platforms. But last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. My bedroom was freezing. My breath was visible in the air. And from downstairs, I heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Moving from one end of the house to the other. Then they stopped. And from just outside my bedroom door, I heard a whisper. You looked? I never believed in curses until I found that cabin deep in the Cascade Mountains. It was late October. I'd been hiking solo for 3 days, trying to clear my head after a brutal breakup. The trail markers had become sparse. As dusk approached, a thick fog rolled through the pines like something alive, swallowing the path behind me. That's when I saw it. A small wooden cabin, practically invisible among the trees, its logs dark with age and moisture. No smoke from the chimney. No lights, just sitting there in the gathering darkness like it had been waiting. I should have kept walking. The door was unlocked. It wasn't even fully closed, just resting against the frame, swollen with dampness. Inside, everything was covered in dust, thick as snow. A single room with a fireplace, a table, 2 chairs, and a rotted mattress. On the table sat an oil lamp, matches beside it, and a leather journal. The temperature was dropping fast. I could see my breath. I told myself I'd just stay until dawn, then find my way back to the trail. I lit the lamp. That's when I noticed the walls. Scratches. Hundreds of them. Deep gouges in the wood, running floor to ceiling, clustered around the door and windows, like something had been trying desperately to get out, or keep something else from getting in. The journal was dated 1987. The handwriting started neat, organized. Day 1, found excellent shelter. We'll wait out the storm here. Day 3, storm hasn't let up. Supplies holding, strange sounds at night. Probably just animals. Day 7, something circles the cabin after dark. I see shadows moving past the windows. When I look directly, Nothing's there. My flashlight batteries are dying. The entries grew more frantic, the handwriting deteriorating. Day 12. IT knows I'm here. Scratching at the door all night. I don't sleep anymore. Can't leave. Tried twice. Both times, the fog gets thicker, and I end up back here. The forest won't let me go. Day 18. Saw its face in the window. Not animal. Not human. Something older. Something that should be dead. The final entry was almost illegible. Day 23. It's inside now. In the walls. I hear it breathing between the logs. If you're reading this, you're already trapped. It only needs one person at a time. I'm so sorry. Don't let the lamp go out. When the light dies, so do. The entry ended mid-sentence. Outside, full darkness had fallen, and that's when I heard it, a slow, deliberate scratching sound, starting at the far corner of the cabin, moving along the exterior wall, not the random scratch of a branch. This was methodical, intentional. I grabbed the lamp and moved to the center of the room, away from all the walls. The scratching continued, circling the cabin, getting closer to the door. Then it stopped. Silence, heavy and suffocating. Then came the breathing, low and wet, just outside the door. The kind of breathing that sounds like it's coming from lungs filled with dirt and decay. The door creaked, pushing inward slightly. Though I'd braced it with a chair, I checked the lamp. The oil was half gone. The breathing continued for hours, sometimes at the door, sometimes at the windows, once directly above me, on the roof. So heavy I thought the ceiling would cave in, but I never saw what made the sounds. As dawn approached, I noticed something horrifying. New scratches on the inside of the door. Fresh ones, deep gouges in the wood. That definitely weren't there before, and I'd been in here all night. Had I made them? I looked at my hands. My fingernails were cracked and bleeding. The lamp flickered. The oil was almost gone. Panic set in. I shoved the table against the door and ran to the window, ready to break through. But outside, instead of the forest I'd entered from, I saw only fog. Thick, gray, endless fog, and shapes moving within it. Tall, impossibly thin shapes that swayed like trees but moved with purpose. The lamp flickered again. I spun around and saw it in the corner I'd just been facing, now standing in the shadows, where the lamplight didn't quite reach. A figure. Humanoid but wrong. Too tall. Limbs too long. Head tilted at an angle. That would break a human neck. Its skin looked like rotted bark, cracked and peeling. Where eyes should be, there were just hollow spaces. Deep and dark, and it was smiling. A lipless grin showing teeth like broken stones. The lamp went out. In the complete darkness, I heard movement. Slow footsteps, the rustle of something dragging across the floor, and that breathing, now inches from my face, reeking of earth and decomposition. I fumbled for them. My hand shook so badly I dropped the box. Matches scattered across the floor. On my hands and knees, I frantically searched, in the pitch black while the breathing circled me, playing with me. Finally, I found one. Struck it. In the brief flare of light, I saw it crouch directly in front of me. That horrible face, inches from mine, mouth impossibly wide. The match went out. I screamed and scrambled backward, finding the lamp, pouring in the last drops of oil from a spare can, lit it with trembling hands. The creature was gone, but on the wall, written in what looked like soot. Day 1, I tried the door. Tried the windows. The fog outside was impenetrable, and every time I stepped into it, I'd somehow turn around and find myself back at the cabin door. The forest had become a maze with only one room. That was 6 days ago. I found a pencil, and I've been continuing the journal. The thing comes every night. Sometimes I see it. Sometimes I only hear it. It seems to feed on fear, on desperation. The scratches on the walls grow more numerous. Many of them I don't remember making, but they appear anyway, like the cabin itself is keeping count. The oil is running low again. I've been rationing it. But there's maybe 2 nights left. I found something else today. A pile of clothes in the corner beneath the floorboards. Old hiking gear, different decades, different styles, all of them covered in scratch marks and dried blood. I'm not the first. I won't be the last. If you're reading this, you've already made the same mistake I did. The cabin looks like shelter, like salvation, but it's a trap. This thing, whatever it is, it keeps one person here at a time. When I die or disappear, the cabin will reset, waiting in the fog for the next lost hiker. Don't trust the lamp. Don't trust the silence. And whatever you do, don't look into the fog when you hear your name being called in your own voice. It's learning. It's almost dark again. The lamp is flickering. Every town has that one radio frequency that plays nothing but static. In Millbrook, Minnesota, it was 89.4 FM. Just dead air. White noise. Nothing. Until 3 weeks ago. I'm a long-haul trucker, and I drive through Millbrook every Thursday night around 2 a.m. It's a nowhere town. 1 gas station, 1 diner, farms, and darkness 4 miles. That Thursday, my radio started acting up around mile marker 47. Stations cutting in and out, then it locked on to 89.4. Static, but underneath it, something else. A voice. Faint. Whispering. I turned up the volume. The voice was reading numbers, just numbers. Random sequences. 7, 19, 3, 42, 8. A woman's voice. Flat and emotionless. Then it stopped. Silence. Complete silence. No static. Nothing. Then, Michael is already dead. My name is Michael. I nearly drove off the road. I grabbed the dial to change the station, but it wouldn't budge. Stuck on 89.4. The voice continued. Michael doesn't know yet. Michael thinks he's driving. Michael thinks he's alive, but Michael died at mile marker 52. 7 minutes from now. Ice flooded my veins. Mile marker 52 was just ahead. I could see the sign in my headlights. Primera slowed down, checked my mirrors. The road was empty, just me and the darkness. I passed mile marker 52 doing 40. Nothing happened. The radio crackled. Interesting. Michael chose caution. The pattern shifts. New data. Michael dies at mile marker 58. Cause. Cardiac. Even. For induced. My chest tightened. My heart was racing, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Was I having a heart attack? Was this broadcast somehow causing it? I pulled over. Hazards on, hands shaking. I tried my cell phone. No signal. I tried the radio again. Still locked on 89.4. The voice. Michael has stopped. Michael is afraid. This is expected. But stopping doesn't help. The broadcast reaches everywhere in Millbrook. In cars. In homes. In minds. Michael cannot escape by standing still. I looked around. The darkness pressed against my windows. No other cars, no lights. Except my truck's headlights. In the distance, maybe a mile off the road, I could see a single farmhouse, 1 window lit. The voice. Michael sees the house. Michael considers asking for help. But the house is empty. Has been empty for 3 years. The light is not electric. The light is something else. Something watching. I stared at that distant light. As I watched, it moved. Shifted from one window to another. Then to the porch. Then it was outside, in the yard, getting closer. I got back in the truck, started driving. Fast. The voice. Michael is running. This is also expected, but there is nowhere to run. Millbrook is a circle. All roads lead back. All paths return. I pushed the truck to 80. The mile markers flashed past. 53. 54. 55, then 44, 45, 46. I'd been driving forward, but the numbers were going backward. I slammed the brakes, checked my GPS. It was spinning, the arrow rotating endlessly. The screen glitched, showing my location as somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, then Antarctica. The voice. Michael is beginning to understand. Millbrook is not a place. Millbrook is a frequency. A wavelength. Once you tune in, you cannot tune out. Welcome to the broadcast. That's when I saw them. Figures standing along the roadside. Dozens of Tim, just standing there in the darkness, facing the road. As my headlights hit them, they didn't move, didn't react. They were naked, pale, identical. Every single one had the same face. My face. All of them were me, the voice. These are the previous Michaels. The ones who drove this road. They are part of the signal now. I accelerated past them. In my mirrors, I watched them turn in unison, watching my truck disappear. Then they started walking, following. The voice. Michael cannot outrun the broadcast. The broadcast is not behind Michael. The broadcast is inside Michael. Has been since birth. Everyone in Millbrook is born tuned to 89.4. Mile marker 52 appeared again. I've been driving in circles, and standing directly on mile marker 52 was another figure. This one different. Taller. Wearing an old radio station engineer's uniform. Its head was wrong, with a face that was just smooth skin, except for a mouth that opened vertically. The voice. This is the broadcaster. This is the signal made flesh. Michael should stop. Michael should receive the message. I swerved around it, but as I passed, it reached out with impossible speed and touched my truck. Just a light tap on the trailer, but I heard it. A deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the entire vehicle. My radio exploded. Sparks flew from the dashboard, but the voice didn't stop. Now it was coming from everywhere. The CB radio, my phone. The air itself seemed to vibrate with it. Michael is now a receiver. Michael is now a transmitter. Michael is now part of the network. I could feel it, something inside my head, like a tuning fork being struck. And with it came knowledge. Terrible knowledge. I understood what Millbrook was. Not a town. A broadcast station. An experiment that started in 1952 when a radio engineer named Harold Voss discovered a frequency, a signal that could reach into human consciousness itself. He started broadcasting. Numbers. Messages. Warnings. But the frequency changed him, changed everyone who heard it for too long. They became part of the signal, and Millbrook became the antenna, broadcasting its signal outward, waiting for travelers to tune in. The voice. Harold welcomes Michael. Harold was the first. Harold is the broadcaster. Harold has been waiting for Michael specifically. I looked in my rearview mirror. The figures were closer, hundreds of them now, all wearing my face, all walking in perfect synchronization. And behind them, the broadcaster, impossibly tall now, growing larger with each step. The voice. Michael's truck is stopping. My foot pressed the brake without my permission. The truck slowed, stopped. I tried to move my leg, but it wouldn't respond. My body wasn't mine anymore. The voice. Michael's door is opening. My hand reached for the door handle. I screamed, but even my voice was becoming part of the broadcast. My words distorting into numbers. 7, 19, 3, 42, 8. The door opened. The cold night air rushed in, and with it, that smell, ozone and copper, and something else. Something that smelled like the inside of old radio equipment. The figures surrounded my truck, all those versions of me, staring with empty eyes. The broadcaster approached, its vertical mouth opening, revealing not teeth but vacuum tubes, glowing with ancient amber light. The voice. Michael is joining the broadcast. Michael is becoming the message. In 7 days, a new traveler will drive through Millbrook. A new frequency will be tuned. The broadcast continues. The broadcast is eternal. I felt myself stepping down from the truck. Felt my clothes falling away. Felt my identity dissolving like static between stations. I was becoming one of them. Another transmitter. Another version of the signal. But here's the thing they didn't expect. I'm a trucker. I've been driving this route for 15 years. I know roads. I know signals. I know how to find dead zones. In that last moment, as the frequency tried to fully absorb me, I remembered something. A spot about a quarter-mile back, where cell service always cut out completely. A dead zone. A place where signals die. I ran. Behind me, the broadcast shrieked. All those mouths, opening in unison, screaming in frequencies that shattered my truck's windows. But I ran toward that dead zone, feeling the signal weakening with each step. I collapsed right on the boundary. Half in, half out. And in that moment between frequencies, I broke free. I woke up in a hospital in Duluth, 70 miles from Miller. They said a passing motorist found me walking along the highway, naked and screaming about radios. My truck was never found. Neither was any town called Mill. According to maps, there's nothing at mile marker 47. But I know better. I can still feel it sometimes. Late at night, that frequency at the edge of my consciousness. That signal trying to tune back in, and sometimes, when I'm driving and the radio hits static, I hear it, faint but clear. Michael got away. Michael cannot stay away. Michael will return. The broadcast always calls back its own. See you soon, Michael. See you at 89.4. I don't drive at night anymore. And I never, ever touch the radio dial. But last week my clock radio went off at 2 a.m. A station I'd never programmed. A frequency that shouldn't exist. 89.4 FM. And I could hear myself, my voice, reading numbers, waiting for the next Michael to tune in. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're stepping back in time to uncover the story of a truly remarkable building. 1847 Ashland Avenue. It's more than just an address. It's a living piece of history, a silent witness to over a century of change, and a masterpiece of architectural design. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's explore the legacy of this iconic structure. Our story begins in the late 19th century, a period of immense growth and prosperity. The city was expanding, and new neighborhoods were springing up, each with its own unique character. It was in this vibrant era that a prominent local family, the Pattersons, decided to build their dream home. They weren't just looking for a place to live, they wanted to make a statement. They envisioned a residence that would reflect their status, their taste, and their optimism for the future. To bring their vision to life, they commissioned a young, ambitious architect named Elias Vance. Vance was a student of the Queen Anne style, which was sweeping the nation at the time. This architectural movement was all about exuberance, asymmetry, and intricate detailing. Think sprawling wraparound porches, towering turrets, ornate gables, and a rich tapestry of textures and materials. Vance saw 1847 Ashland Avenue as his canvas, a chance to create his magnum opus. Construction began in 1891 and was a spectacle in itself. The finest materials were sourced from all over the country. Rich mahogany for the interior woodwork, vibrant stained glass for the windows, hand-carved stone for the grand fireplace, and intricate terracotta tiles for the roof. Local artisans and craftsmen were employed, each one a master of their trade. The house slowly rose from the ground, a complex puzzle of towers, bays, and balconies, each detail meticulously planned and executed. When it was finally completed in 1893, it was nothing short of breathtaking. It stood proud on Ashland Avenue, a jewel of the neighborhood. For the next 4 decades, the Patterson family filled the house with life. It was the scene of lavish parties, quiet family moments, and grand holiday celebrations. The laughter of children echoed through its halls, and the scent of grand dinners wafted from the kitchen. It was a home in the truest sense of the word. But as the roaring 20s gave way to the Great Depression, the family's fortunes changed. Maintaining such a grand residence became an impossible burden. In the late 1930s, the Pattersons made the difficult decision to sell their beloved home, closing the first chapter of its long history. The middle of the 20th century was a period of great upheaval, and 1847 Ashland Avenue was not immune. The once grand single-family home was subdivided into apartments to meet the housing demands of a growing city. The spacious ballroom was partitioned, the ornate parlors were converted into small living units, and the grand staircase saw a constant stream of tenants. While this change provided much-needed housing, it took a toll on the building's integrity. Original features were covered up or removed, and the once pristine structure began to show its age. By the 1970s, the grand dame of Ashland Avenue had fallen into a state of disrepair. The vibrant paint was peeling, the roof was leaking, and the intricate woodwork was neglected. It seemed like its best days were long behind it, but just when it seemed all hope was lost, a new chapter began. In the early 1980s, a group of passionate local historians and preservationists formed the Ashland Avenue Heritage Society. They saw the faded beauty beneath the years of neglect. They recognized 1847 Ashland Avenue not just as an old building, but as an irreplaceable piece of their city's cultural heritage. Their mission was clear: to save this architectural treasure from demolition and restore it to its former glory. The restoration project was a monumental undertaking. It was a labor of love that spanned nearly a decade. The team started by poring over original blueprints, old photographs, and historical documents to understand Elias Vance's original vision. This wasn't just a repair job. It was an act of architectural archaeology. Layer by layer, they peeled back the additions and modifications of the mid-century. They carefully removed drywall to reveal hidden fireplaces and intricate plasterwork. They stripped away layers of paint to uncover the original hand-carved mahogany panels. Skilled artisans were brought in to replicate missing elements. Stained glass artists meticulously recreated the patterns of the original windows. Woodcarvers painstakingly reproduced the intricate details of the balustrades and newel posts. Every decision, from the color of the paint on the exterior siding to the pattern of the wallpaper in the main hall, was made with historical accuracy in mind. It was a slow, painstaking process, but as the project progressed, the soul of the house began to re-emerge. The grand staircase once again gleamed. The stained glass cast colorful patterns on the floors, and the turret stood tall and proud against the sky. Today, 1847, Ashland Avenue stands fully restored, a testament to the power of community and the importance of preserving our past. It no longer serves as a private residence, but has been given a new purpose as a living museum and cultural center. The doors are open to the public, inviting everyone to step inside and experience a bygone era. Walking through its rooms is like traveling back in time. You can admire the craftsmanship, learn about the Patterson family, and understand the architectural significance of the Queen Anne style. The house also hosts art exhibitions, historical lectures, and community events, ensuring that it remains a vibrant and active part of the neighborhood it has graced for over 100 years. The story of 1847 Ashland Avenue is a powerful reminder that our buildings are more than just brick and mortar. They are the keepers of our stories, the anchors of our communities, and the physical embodiment of our history. They connect us to the generations that came before us, and serve as a legacy for the ones who will come after. The journey of this house grew from a dream home to a neglected apartment building and finally to a restored cultural landmark is a story of resilience, vision, and the enduring value of preservation. It teaches us that with care and dedication, we can ensure that our most precious historical treasures continue to inspire and educate for centuries to come. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. What an incredible story of dedication and preservation. If you've ever visited a restored historical home like this one, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories behind the world's most fascinating places. See you next time.